Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our publishing and coaching services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Peter Von Der Ahe, author of Family Secrets. Peter, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul. Happy to be here.
Are you ready to get started?
100%.
All right. Question
Let's
number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Let's see. If I had to think about my first piece of advice, it would be what I didn't do, which is I finished the book and then started using it and marketing it. And looking back on that process, when you're going through the writing, there are so many multiple ways that you can use the content incrementally as you're writing the book. Whether it's blogs, newsletters, emails, and you can also social media, and then you can also be gathering feedback and essentially co-creating the book as you're writing it, because your audience and the world will be giving you feedback as that's going on. So I did the whole product and then presented it to the marketplace, whereas today what's available to you, you could plan it out and and get feedback as you're writing it, and also that it's great content for marketing whatever subject matter it is. So that would probably be my biggest piece of advice, and something that I definitely did wrong.
Well, another thing too is you can actually utilize a lot of that for repurposing content as well.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, and that's essentially what I'm saying, is that as you're incrementally writing, you've got content there. I mean, anyone who's marketing anything, they're one of their biggest struggles is how to produce worthwhile content to be using on a weekly or monthly, whatever basis. And if you're going to undertake the task of writing a book, you're generating all that content, so you might as well use it incrementally.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's funny, my third book, Positivity Attracts, I actually utilized most of the information from a blog I posted about disconnecting for the day and how it felt like going through technology withdrawals and just the difference it made. And we took that and essentially used that for most of a chapter about disconnecting from technology and taking a break.
Right.
So it's so funny how you can repurpose that information into your books and vice versa.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Well,
yeah.
What do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I actually think I would interpret the question as getting published / deciding to write the book. And I think the hardest part is actually the initial commitment to actually do it. So, a lot of people have the idea to do it, or it's something that they would like to do, but they never actually take action to do it. And you have your service. There are many services out there that can help you get over that initial hurdle of taking action. But I would say it was probably an idea that I sat on for almost a year before I actually did it. It's definitely paid tremendous dividends. So that's once you're in it and the train's moving, not that parts of it aren't difficult or there aren't obstacles that you have to navigate around, but the biggest part is just getting the project started, I think, and it's a commitment. You got to make a commitment to do it, and so that's what I think it is.
Well, that reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, and that is from Lao Tzu, talking about the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first steps. And I feel that connects perfectly into that. It's just getting started and just taking those first few steps.
Yeah, and taking the first few steps, and if you're driving across the country, you don't need, if you start on the East Coast and you're driving to the West Coast, you don't need to know the road map for Colorado when you start. And so, you break it down into parts and you just start it. So, I think getting started was probably the most difficult part for me.
And with your book, did you go through a traditional publisher or did you publish it yourself?
I went through. I didn't go through a traditional publisher. I went through a business publisher. That helped me with, with all of that, that part of it. So, yeah.
Cool. And do you mind?
I had no experience. I had no experience of, my book is Family Secrets. The tagline is Secret Strategies for Multifamily Investing in New York City multifamily investing. So I am in an industry that's very far away from book publishing. So, that's why I had them help me.
Absolutely. If you don't mind me asking, which business publisher did you go through?
Sure. It's called the Jenkins Group. Yeah, out of, I think, Michigan.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that, because there's so many different
No problem.
publishers out there, and you're right. Some of them work specifically with business, some work with different areas. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And that's going to transition nicely into our next question, and that is in regards to marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
Well, this is kind of, I guess, relate maybe to the first or second question, which is, I didn't, I had my goal was to get the book done and then figure out what to do. So I didn't strategize ahead of time in a way that I could have of how to market it and how to use it as a real pop. And I wrote that book. I think it came out, I don't know, about 7 years ago. So a lot of the ways, especially when you think about social media and some of the more exponential technological ways to market and promote something like that didn't exist back then the way they do now. So, but for us, the highest value for the book is two ways. One, when I'm meeting, first of all, for clients that you can't meet face to face, the book is a huge, establishes credibility. You can get clients to know you ahead of time. So when you do finally have an opportunity to either meet or you do intersect them at a time where they're going to do business, they feel like they know you already. So, that's our primary use because it's such a small subject matter. So that's how we use it. But frankly, also, beyond that, just Amazon itself is, some of the marketing that you can do on Amazon works out pretty well.
Absolutely. And you mentioned such a great strategy. In fact, about an hour ago, I was on a Facebook Live with a digital marketing company, and we were talking about the power of utilizing that book. And one of the main things that I emphasized was it's so much more powerful than just having a business card. And when you send someone a paperback copy of your book, and for instance, I have several books on publishing. So if I'm sending out my Get Published book, I always put an inscription in there. I'm go, hey, it's so great to meet you, or I can't wait to get to know you. Whenever you're ready, let me know, and I'd love to work with you. And I put my phone number in there, and it's just so much more powerful than just sending out a business card.
Right, 100%. Yeah, and it's just it's a huge it's a huge distinguisher, and I echo everything you just said.
Well, and did you have a particular strategy when you sent the book out to prospective clients? Were these people that you're already working with, or were these new clients that you're wanting to start to build relationships with in terms of potentially cold traffic, perhaps?
Well, I mean, there are some specific tools. So if there's, for example, someone that we want to end up speaking to that we can't, if you send them the book and then call them the next day, I think I'm batting like 100% on that type of kind of very specific use. Since that time, now I host a podcast. I have, we have a lot of content that comes out from blogs and social media and other medium that comes out. All these type of things come out several times a month, and all of them. At some point, whether it's through our website or some of the other advertising that they do, end up tying back to the book. So if you're doing a whole well-rounded marketing program, and I think we were just talking about this before, where before we were recording, where
Yep.
you have multiple channels occurring at the same time. Although I didn't use the book to its maximum potential when it came out, it now also fills in that slot where, as people are encountering your material, some may want to listen to it, some may want to read a shorter, blog post and consume stuff that way. Others are just going to want to come straight to the book. So I think part of it is also putting yourself in a position and putting your content or your business or whatever in a position so your clients and customers and audience, you can meet them where they are and where they want to be. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about the world today is that, whether it's email, newsletters, blog posts, all social media, we mentioned podcasts, and then you've got books. It's not just one or two ways you can actually reach out to clients now or connect with them. You've got multitude of ways, and you add in-person events and stuff like that. So it's just the book is one part of a multifaceted strategy, and I just think it's fascinating because it's you have so many more tools at your disposal today to market your product, your service, your content, whatever it is.
Peter, I agree completely. One of the things that I typically refer to the book as is the foundation of your platform.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can utilize it in so many different areas. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate you sharing that information. So let's talk a little bit about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book? And what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Sure. So this is an impossible question to ask because it's hard to say what's like one favorite book to read. And I've messed around a couple. I've messed around a couple times this year with starting my day with reading for 30 minutes or so beforehand. So I read a couple years ago that Zuckerberg, for his annual goal, put out that he wanted to read 24 books in that particular year, and I think I just crossed the 20 mark or something for this year. So I try to read a lot of books, but one that I read earlier this year that really made a big impact on me was a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. And in case you don't know, Ray Dalio has run the most successful and largest hedge fund in history called Bridgewater, and he's, in the intro, he describes how he's kind of moving on to a different stage of his life where he's going to share some of the things that helped get him to where he is, and so this book is, it reads somewhere between a story and a textbook and a business book all wrapped into one, but the just pure knowledge that is packed into this book I found to be really amazing. And what I do when I read something like that is I'll read it on my Kindle and then use the highlight feature where you can highlight and then you can export the highlights, and it allows you, because it allows it, your retention goes way up if you review some of the highlights after you're reading something, especially a book like this. I think the book's like 600 or 700 pages or something like that. So it's a big, thick one. But so that is one of the better books that I've read in recent memory.
And that is such a great idea to highlight it, and then that way just to export it out from there versus just taking notes on every little thing, because you could spend the whole day just taking notes. So that's such a great idea to highlight it and outsource it out.
100%. Yeah, you take notes. You ruin your reading experience. And Amazon is also so smart because from your Kindle or whatever, you hit a button, and when it comes to your email, it's formatted, it's PDF and all that kind of stuff. This is stuff that maybe you already know or you've talked about before on your show, but I find it to be a great tool, especially if you're reading something like that where it's not necessarily a novel, but it's maybe something where you're looking to retain some of the content or knowledge that's in there.
Absolutely. And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote. Well, let's say I'll take a theme from that book, and I don't know if I'm getting this exactly verbatim, but one of the whole points of Dalio's book is it's about radical, honesty and transparency. And, in a business setting, he distinguishes between being right and getting it right. And, so I think his quote was something along the lines of, I'm more concerned with getting it right than being right. And if you can get everybody you work with to adopt that same mindset, all of a sudden you guys can really produce something significant, because it's not about the ego, it's just about getting it right. So I found that to be simple and also very powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Getting it right. That's one of the main things.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Sure. There's two ways. One, if you go to behindthebricks.com, that will take you to my podcast and some of the other medias I do. As I said, I do a podcast on New York City real estate investing, multifamily investing, and that's at behindthebricks.com, or of course on iTunes. And then for the actually making the investments in New York City multifamily real estate, you can go to New York Multifamily, all spelled out, all one word, .com. So NewYorkMultifamily.com.
Well, Peter, thank you again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.